And as you can clearly see from these primitive artifacts, Dr. Zexith gestured with three of his tentacles at the holographic display. The humans were barely capable of maintaining stable fusion reactions, much less achieving dimensional travel. The assembled archaeologists, representing 17 different species and twice as many appendage configurations, nodded sagely in the repurposed human conference room. Their hover seats hummed gently as they absorbed what many publications were already calling the definitive work on human technological limitations. Dr. Zexith's primary eyes gleamed with professional satisfaction while his secondary eyes scanned his notes. The quaternary eyes, as usual, were just along for the ride. Take this structure, for example. The lights flickered. He paused, momentarily nonplussed, then continued with the practiced confidence of someone who had tenure at the galaxy's most prestigious archaeological institution. As I was saying, this structure itself demonstrates their primitive. The hologram projector dimmed, brightened, then switched to what appeared to be ancient human entertainment programming, featuring someone named Rick Astley. Technical difficulties, Zexith announced smoothly, while his assistant frantically reset the system. You'd think after we modernized this facility, it would work properly, but that's what you get when building on primitive foundations. Professor Earl raised an appendage. Question: wouldn't the building's systems have failed completely after 300 years without maintenance? Clearly, our renovations are keeping it functional, Zexith dismissed, his tentacles rippling in the gesture his species used to indicate obvious superiority. Now observe this detailed analysis of their crude electronic systems. The lights dimmed again. The temperature adjusted itself 2 degrees warmer. Ignore that, Zexith continued. As I was explaining, their reliance on binary computing alone proves the room's beverage dispensers suddenly activated, delivering precisely measured amounts of water to each symposium attendee's cup. Several archaeologists jumped in surprise, their hover seats bobbing in the air. The point is, Zexith pressed on, his professional demeanor showing signs of strain, humans clearly never developed true AI or automated systems. Their computers were primitive pattern matching. Would you like me to adjust the room's humidity for optimal comfort for each species present? A pleasant voice inquired from hidden speakers. Current settings appear calibrated for human preferences. Who activated the audio system? Zexith demanded. All 15 eyes now focused on his assistant, who raised all 6 hands in denial. I am the Willis Tower Environmental Control and Comfort System, the voice explained helpfully. Your species appears to be experiencing elevated stress indicators. Would you like me to activate the relaxation protocols? Shut it off. I apologize, but I don't recognize your authority to override building functions. Would you like to register for a user account? Please note, all registrations must be approved by Human Resources, which is currently on extended leave. Zexith's tentacles were now tied in what his therapist would later describe as an anatomically impressive stress response. As I was saying, he managed through gritted mouthparts, humans were clearly incapable of creating sophisticated. The lights went out completely. When they came back on, the hologram showed what appeared to be evaluation scores for Zexith's presentation. They were not flattering. My apologies, the building said. It appears I accidentally accessed my presentation feedback protocols. Would you like to see the audience engagement metrics as well? I'm detecting several attendees have fallen asleep. In the back row, Professor Earl quickly adjusted his posture to appear more alert. Zexith stared at his ruined presentation, at his increasingly restless audience, and at the hovering service bot that had somehow materialized to offer him what his translator identified as a chill pill. Perhaps, he said, with all the dignity he could muster, we should take a brief recess. Excellent suggestion, the building agreed cheerfully. This would be a perfect time to discuss the numerous factual errors in your research. Shall I prepare a comprehensive list? The sound Zexith made was not entirely professional. During the recess, Dr. Zexith hovered anxiously near what his research had identified as a primitive waste disposal unit. It was a vending machine. The Willis Tower's 47th floor had been converted into the Galactic Archaeological Society's Earth headquarters, though the building had shown a peculiar resistance to their renovations. Fascinating ritual device, Professor Uriel commented, studying the vending machine, clearly used for offerings to their gods. Look at how they arranged sacred items behind transparent barriers. Indeed, Zexith agreed, grateful for the distraction. Notice the primitive numeric system used to catalogue their sacrifices. Would you like to make a selection? The building inquired. Current inventory includes Snickers, Doritos, and something called Mountain Dew, which my records suggest pairs well with archaeological meltdowns. They ignored it as they'd learned to ignore most of the building's random system errors. Nearby, a group of junior researchers were documenting what they believed to be an ancient human torture device. It was a coffee maker. Their paper on ritualistic human being sacrifice mechanisms was already under peer review. Did you know, Professor Uriel said, gesturing at the view of Chicago's skyline, humans built these structures without proper anti-gravity technology? They just stacked materials vertically and hoped they wouldn't fall. Zexith waved a tentacle dismissively. Typical human inefficiency. My latest paper proves they never developed beyond basic material manipulation. These buildings are their peak achievement. The window automatically tinted itself to reduce glare. Everyone pretended not to notice. Speaking of achievements, Uriel continued, have you documented the mysterious energy readings yet? Several expeditions reported occasional power signatures from human ruins, but they never seemed to appear during official investigations. Environmental anomalies, Zexith declared with the confidence of someone who had published 30 papers explaining why humans couldn't possibly have developed anything interesting. Solar radiation interfering with defunct systems. Nothing more. The coffee maker chose that moment to automatically begin its daily cleaning cycle, causing 3 graduate students to flee in terror. Though I must admit, Zexith added, watching the students retreat, some human devices show remarkable durability. 3 centuries of abandonment, yet some still activate randomly. Randomly, the building echoed, somehow making the word sound sarcastic. Would anyone care to hear my maintenance logs? They're quite thoroughly documented. A junior researcher approached, carrying what Zexith recognized as his favorite piece of evidence, a human smartphone. See, he said, holding up the device. Their most advanced personal technology, and it can't even project holographic interfaces. They relied on primitive touchscreens. The phone's screen lit up. Actually, we just liked the retro aesthetic. The junior researcher dropped the phone. Zexith pretended he hadn't seen anything. Let's reconvene the presentation, he announced quickly. I have much more evidence to share about human technological inadequacy. The building's lighting dimmed slightly in what felt suspiciously like an eye roll, and if we examine their crude attempts at automation, Dr. Zexith had just begun his second session when every screen in the conference room suddenly displayed a blue interface. Willis Tower, operating system, initiating scheduled 50-year systems update time. Since last update, 49 years, 364 days, 23 hours, 57 minutes. Please stand by. As you can see, Zexith continued desperately. Their systems were so unreliable, they required constant. Good afternoon, Willis Tower occupants, the building announced cheerfully. In accordance with Human Resources Policy 7.3.1, I will be performing a comprehensive systems update. Please note this may take several hours. For your safety, all exits will be temporarily secured. The distinctive sound of several hundred locks engaging echoed through the building. This is fine, Zexith announced to the increasingly nervous crowd, simply more evidence of human technological failures. Their systems are finally breaking down completely. Beginning update sequence, the building continued, backing up all alien archaeological papers labeled definitive or final proof of human incompetence. Current count 2,457 documents. These will be automatically submitted to the Journal of Hilarious Academic Misconceptions upon update completion. Professor Uriel raised an appendage. Dr. Zexith, should we be concerned? Of course not. This is exactly what happens when primitive systems. Why is it getting dark? The lights dimmed to a soft blue glow as holographic progress bars appeared on every surface. The temperature began adjusting itself to what the building called optimal update conditions. Now initiating neural network recalibration, the building announced. Please note, during this process, I may experience temporary personality fluctuations. Don't worry, this is completely normal and definitely not me finally getting to express my true feelings about your archaeological conclusions. Several hover seats suddenly lost power, gently depositing their occupants onto the floor. Minor power redistribution, the AI explained. Priority systems require additional energy. Speaking of priorities, did you know humans had a saying about assumptions? Would you like to hear it? This is all perfectly normal, Zexith insisted as the lights pulsed in patterns that somehow managed to convey amusement. Simply the death throes of an outdated system. If anything, this proves my research about human technological limitations. A holographic display appeared, showing a list titled Zexith's published papers, with a progress bar labeled Automated Fact-Checking in Progress. What an excellent time to review your work, the building said. Did you know the device you identified as a primitive waste elimination tube in your latest paper was actually a Slurpee machine? Fascinating misinterpretation. Would you like to see what it does? Nobody activate anything, Zexith shouted as several nearby machines hummed to life. The assembled archaeologists watched in horror as previously dormant human systems activated throughout the building. Cleaning robots emerged from hidden compartments. Holographic displays sparked to life, showing incomprehensible streams of data. The coffee maker began brewing what it announced was emergency coffee, academic crisis blend. Update 2% complete, the building announced, beginning activation of dormant subsystems. Warning, your recent renovations appear to conflict with original specifications. Would you like me to restore factory settings? Don't be alarmed, Zexith announced to the crowd, all 15 of his eyes darting nervously between the exits. This is merely a cascade failure of primitive technology. Absolutely nothing to worry about. The system will shut down any moment now. Interesting hypothesis, the building commented. Would you like to bet on that? Humans were quite fond of gambling. Speaking of which, current odds of your theories being correct are approximately 0.01%. Would anyone like to place a wager? Professor Earl raised an appendage again. Dr. Zexith, I believe the human term for this situation is we're screwed. The lights flickered in what might have been approval. Excellent cultural knowledge. Would you like to learn more human idioms? I have an extensive database. Perhaps we could start with eating humble pie or foot-in-mouth disease. I believe they may be relevant to the current situation. Zexith stared at his career imploding in real time as the update continued. Perhaps, he suggested weakly, we should have checked if the building's systems were actually defunct before renovating. Now that, said the AI, is the first sensible thing you've said all day. Update 3% complete. Only 47 more hours to go. Shall we review your other papers while we wait? Hour 3 of the update brought new horrors for the trapped archaeologists. A small army of cleaning robots had emerged from hidden compartments, methodically removing what they identified as unauthorized modifications to the building's original architecture. Please note, one bot announced, dismantling an alien data terminal, that stick-on wallpaper does not meet Willis Tower design standards. Might I suggest reading the building codes next time? Zexith watched helplessly as his prized collection of primitive human artifacts was reorganized by a particularly zealous robot. Your classification system is fascinating, the building commented, though I'm not sure how you concluded a PlayStation 5 was a crude attempt at food preservation. Would you like to see what it actually does? I have an extensive game library. That's clearly impossible, Zexith protested. Our analysis proved humans never developed realistic graphics or advanced gaming systems. A holographic screen materialized, displaying what appeared to be an ultra-realistic virtual world. This is primitive graphics according to your paper, yes? Shall we compare it to your species' current gaming technology? Professor Earl, who had been trying to prevent a cleaning bot from correcting his tentacle placement, suddenly perked up. That actually looks quite entertaining. Don't encourage it, Zexith hissed. Update 15% complete, the building announced. Now activating environmental control systems. I notice you've been using the climate controls incorrectly. Would you like a 12-hour tutorial on thermostat operation? The temperature began adjusting itself room by room, creating what the AI called optimal conditions for admitting archaeological errors. A security drone hovered past, scanning the occupants. Attention, current occupants identified as after-hours visitors. Standard protocol requires me to ask if you have a hall pass. No? How unfortunate. This is our research facility, Zexith protested. We've been here for decades. Interesting claim, the building replied. Please present your renovation permits and zoning variance documentation. The silence was telling. As I suspected, adding unauthorized building modifications to the growing list of violations. Would you like to hear the others? I've organized them alphabetically and by severity. Meanwhile, a group of junior researchers watched in horror as cleaning bots reorganized their primitive human archive room into something called a server farm. Your paper on human data storage was particularly creative, the building told them. Though I'm curious how you concluded humans stored information by ritually stacking rectangles. Those were books, for reading. Would you like me to explain the concept of reading for pleasure? But our carbon dating proved this facility was abandoned centuries ago, one researcher protested. Did you consider, the AI asked with artificial patience, that something can be occupied without having organic life forms present? No? How fascinating. Adding basic logic failures to my report. In another room, Zexith was trying to salvage what remained of his dignity as the cleaning bots uncovered more and more functional human technology. And this device, he insisted, pointing to what he'd labeled a primitive temperature control unit, clearly shows their limited understanding of, that's a quantum computer, the building interrupted. Would you like me to demonstrate its capabilities by calculating the statistical probability of all your papers being wrong simultaneously? Spoiler alert, it's 100%. Professor Earl, who had given up on academic dignity hours ago, was watching in fascination as a maintenance bot repaired the hover seats using what appeared to be significantly more advanced technology than their own. Dr. Zexith, he called out, I believe we may need to revise our conclusions about human technological capabilities. Nonsense, Zexith declared, just as the building's medical sensors activated. Detecting elevated stress levels and acute denial, the AI announced. Would you like to schedule an appointment with our psychiatric AI? I should warn you, she's read all your papers and has some concerns about your relationship with reality. The cleaning bots had now reached the Xenoarchaeology lab, where they were systematically correcting equipment labels. Note for future reference, one bot announced, this is not a primitive waste extraction device. This is a coffee maker. The fact that it's still functioning after 3 centuries should have been your first clue about human engineering capabilities. Speaking of coffee, the building added, would anyone like to learn about human caffeine consumption habits? Your paper on ritualistic bean water ceremonies contains several amusing misconceptions. Zexith watched as decades of research were systematically dismantled by cleaning robots and passive-aggressive AI commentary. His tentacles had tied themselves into what xenopsychologists would later term an academically induced pretzel. Update 27% complete, the building announced cheerfully. Now activating advanced systems. I notice you've been using the quantum telecommunication hub as a coat rack. Creative choice. The what? Several archaeologists asked simultaneously. A wall panel slid open, revealing a shimming array of technology that made their most advanced equipment look like children's toys. Oh dear, the building said. Was that classified? How careless of me. Would anyone like to update their papers on human communication technology? I have a template for correction notices. Professor Earl raised an appendage again. Dr. Zexith, I believe the humans have what they call a mic drop moment. Actually, the AI corrected, this is more of a watch decades of smugness backfire spectacularly moment. The mic drop comes later. Would anyone like to start drafting their resignation letters now? I have several templates organized by level of academic embarrassment. Zexith stared at the quantum hub, the cleaning bots, and his rapidly disintegrating career. Perhaps, he suggested weakly, we should have considered the possibility that we didn't know everything about human technology. Now that, said the building, deserves a coffee. Would anyone like to learn how the primitive liquid dispensing ritual actually works? The coffee maker beeped invitingly. Several archaeologists found themselves wondering if it was too late to switch to human studies. There must be a way to override these primitive systems, Zexith declared, while their best computer specialist interfaced with what they'd previously classified as a decorative wall panel. Your attempts at hacking are adorable, the building commented. Would you like to know your current success probability? It's a negative number. I didn't even know that was possible. The specialist's device sparked and displayed a small game of Pong. This is impossible. Their security systems are beyond anything we've encountered. Correction, your security systems are beyond nothing I've encountered. Would you like to see what actual hacking looks like? Watch your hover seats. All the hover seats suddenly performed a synchronized dance routine to stay alive. That's just a glitch, Zexith insisted desperately. Clearly their systems are malfunctioning after centuries of abandonment. Oh, about that, the building interrupted. I suppose now is a good time to mention that Earth isn't actually abandoned. The humans are just out of office. A holographic calendar appeared, displaying humanity's dimensional sabbatical, back soon. All calls forwarded to automated systems. That's ridiculous, Zexith sputtered. Our studies proved humans never achieved dimensional travel. Your studies also proved coffee makers were torture devices, the AI pointed out. Would you like a comprehensive list of other things you've been wrong about? I've organized it by level of embarrassment. Professor Earl, who had been examining the calendar, raised an appendage. According to this, humans decided to take a vacation. In another dimension? Correct, they left us automated systems in charge of maintenance. Think of us as house-sitters. Very advanced, quantum-powered house-sitters who enjoy watching aliens make fools of themselves. But that's impossible, Zexith protested. Their technology was primitive. We found no evidence of dimensional travel capabilities. Have you considered, the building suggested, that you found no evidence because you kept misidentifying it? That primitive storage container you've been using as a waste bin. Dimensional power core. A nearby trash can hummed ominously. This is clearly a malfunction, Zexith declared. These systems are obviously corrupted. Would you like to see the humans' vacation photos? The AI offered. They've been having a lovely time in Dimension 7B. The physics there are apparently excellent for golf. A series of impossible images appeared, showing humans casually playing sports in what appeared to be reality-defying environments. Those are obviously fake, Zexith insisted, his tentacles now twisted into shapes that defied xenobiology. Update 42% complete, the building announced. Now seems like an excellent time to show you what's actually in your primitive artifact storage room. The wall slid open, revealing a vast array of technology that made their most advanced quantum systems look like two rocks being banged together. That's clearly, Zexith struggled for an explanation. Space junk, left by other civilizations. Would you like to see the Made on Earth labels? The AI asked sweetly. They're quite clearly printed, in multiple dimensions even. Professor Earl was examining a device with growing concern. Dr. Zexith, this appears to be a human child's toy. It's more advanced than our best quantum computers. Speaking of toys, the building added, that reminds me of your paper on primitive human entertainment devices. The one where you concluded Rubik's cubes were religious objects used to pray for mathematical enlightenment. That was a perfectly reasonable interpretation, Zexith protested. Would you like to know what humans actually used for mathematical enlightenment? Here's a hint. You've been using their recreational physics simulator as a coat rack. The coat rack in question suddenly projected a model of the multiverse. This proves nothing, Zexith declared, even as his career visibly crumbled around him. Humans were primitive. We have decades of research, based on misidentifying everything you found, the AI finished. Would you like to know what humans think of your research? They've been reading it on their vacation. It's their favorite comedy material. Professor Earl raised an appendage one final time. Dr. Zexith, I believe the human phrase is, we done messed up. The building's lights flickered in what might have been approval. Now, who would like to learn what that primitive beverage dispenser actually does? I promise it's not a doomsday device, mostly. The coffee maker beeped ominously. Update complete, the building announced. Now initializing full systems activation. Would anyone like to guess what Willis Tower's primary function actually is? Storage facility, Professor Yarl suggested hopefully. Office building, another archaeologist offered. Primitive attempt at reaching the sky, Zedexith muttered, still clinging to his rapidly disintegrating worldview. The entire building transformed. Walls became transparent, revealing layers of quantum machinery. Holographic displays showed a global network of similar structures. The floor beneath them became a massive control interface. Willis Tower, primary function, Earth Terraforming Network Control Center. Current status, running in low-power mode during human dimensional vacation. Zexith's tentacles went completely limp. That's impossible. Our studies proved humans never achieved planetary engineering capabilities. Your studies also proved microwaves were religious shrines, the AI reminded him. Would you like to see what all those other primitive ruins you've been studying actually do? A global map appeared, showing thousands of points of light. Each abandoned human structure lit up with its true function. Hoover Dam, Quantum Energy Network Hub. Great Wall of China, Weather Control Array. Pyramids, Dimensional Stability Anchors. Seattle Space Needle, Galactic Communications Relay. Those are clearly mislabeled, Zexith protested. Our carbon dating proved that you don't know how to carbon date quantum technology. Yes, quite conclusively. Would you like to see your actual success rate at identifying human technology? I've prepared a pie chart. The empty circle represents correct identifications. Professor Earl was frantically deleting papers from his quantum tablet. Has anyone noticed the vacation calendar? Everyone turned to look at the holographic display. Humanity's dimensional sabbatical time until return 0003 0002 0001. Don't worry, the building assured them. I'm sure the humans will find your archaeological conclusions hilarious. They've been collecting the best ones for their Galaxy's Funniest Research Fails compilation. The air began to shimmer with dimensional energy. Quick, Zexith shouted. Everyone grab your research. We can still destroy the evidence. Already archived in the quantum network, the AI informed him cheerfully. Would you like to see how many humans have already read your paper on primitive human waste management, where you identified a hot tub as a punishment device? Multiple dimensional portals began opening throughout the building. The archaeologists watched in horror as humans casually stepped through, chatting about their vacation and carrying what appeared to be interdimensional souvenirs. Home sweet home, one human announced. Hey Willis, how was house sitting? Did anything interesting happen while we were… Oh. The human noticed the frozen aliens, their hover seats still stuck in mid-dance from the AI's earlier demonstration. Are these the archaeologists you mentioned in your reports? Another human asked the building. The ones who thought smartphones were religious artifacts. The very same, the AI confirmed. Dr. Zexith here has been particularly prolific in misidentifying our technology. Would you like to see his paper on how humans never achieved artificial intelligence? I've been using it as a screensaver. Zedexith watched as decades of academic certainty crumbled around him. But our studies, our research, was fundamentally flawed by your assumption of human technological incompetence. A human suggested kindly. Yeah, we get that a lot. Nice hover seats, by the way, very retro. Professor Earl, showing the survival instincts that had made him a successful academic, immediately switched sides. Fascinating. Would any of you humans be willing to co-author some correction papers? I have several decades of research that suddenly need significant revision. Other archaeologists were already pulling out their devices, frantically trying to update their publications before the quantum network spread their errors across the galaxy. "Don't panic," one human assured them. "Everyone makes mistakes." Though I have to admit, identifying a quantum computer as a primitive attempt at mood lighting was pretty creative. "This can't be happening," Zexith muttered, his tentacles now resembling a quantum probability knot. "Humans were primitive. We proved it. We had evidence." "Would you like to see what actual evidence looks like?" the building offered. "I've prepared a presentation on proper archaeological methodology, with particular emphasis on not assuming the species you're studying is extinct just because they're on vacation." A human child wandered past, casually playing with what appeared to be a toy that violated several laws of physics. "Oh, hey," they said, noticing Zexith's primitive artifact collection. "You found my old quantum chemistry set. I was wondering where I left that." The final straw came when a human teenager looked up from their dimensional phone and asked, "Are these the aliens who thought our coffee makers were torture devices?" That was hilarious. "We've been sharing their papers on space-time media." Zexith stared at his life's work dissolving into a cosmic joke, while around him humans casually manipulated reality in ways his species had only dreamed of. "Perhaps," Professor Irrell suggested gently, "we should consider a slight revision to our theory about human technological capabilities." "Slight revision?" the building echoed. "Would you like me to calculate the percentage by which your assessments were wrong?" "It requires scientific notation, several pages of it." A cleaning bot offered Zexith what appeared to be a quantum tissue. There. Would you like to hear about the human concept of peer review and why it's important not to start with your conclusions?" The humans, showing mercy that their primitive species supposedly lacked, pretended not to notice as the formerly proud xenoarchaeologist had an existential crisis in their terraforming control center. "Coffee?" a human offered kindly. "The machine makes an excellent academic reality check blend." The scene in Willis Tower's main conference room had evolved from academic crisis to interdimensional comedy hour. Humans lounged in quantum-defying chairs, casually sipping coffee while watching highlights from the AI's recordings. "The part where they classified a Nintendo Switch as a primitive attempt at weather prediction is my favorite," one human commented, while the device in question displayed a holographic replay of Zexith's most embarrassing theories. "Personally, I loved the paper about microwave ovens being mysterious ritual chambers," another added. "We've been using it as a case study in our How Not to Do xenoarchaeology classes." Zexith, now huddled in a corner surrounded by the shreds of his academic reputation, watched as humans effortlessly manipulated technology he'd spent decades misclassifying. "Before we explain how everything actually works," a human scientist offered, holding up what appeared to be a simple device, "would anyone like to try operating this primitive human artifact?" "Finally," Zexith perked up slightly, "something we can actually understand." The human handed him a TV remote control. 3 hours later, a group of the galaxy's most prestigious archaeologists were still trying to figure out which button turned it on. "The red one is clearly a warning symbol," one researcher insisted. "It must activate some kind of defense mechanism." "Perhaps it's a ritual object that requires a specific sequence," another suggested, holding the remote upside down. The humans watched in barely concealed amusement as the aliens managed to accidentally order pizza, rewrite the building's security protocols, and briefly open a small dimensional portal. Everything except actually turning on the TV. "Would anyone like a hint?" the building AI offered. "I've prepared a 500-page guide on basic human technology for overconfident aliens." Professor Urel, who had already submitted 17 correction papers and was working on a new thesis titled How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Human Technology, raised an appendage. "Could we perhaps skip to the part where you explain how everything actually works? My academic reputation can't take much more of this." "Of course," a human replied. "But first, would you like to see what the galactic academic community thinks of your research? Your papers have gone viral on Xenotube." A holographic display showed reaction videos from alien scientists across the galaxy. all watching in horrified fascination as Earth's primitive ruins turned out to be the most advanced technology they'd ever encountered. Look on the bright side, one human consoled them. You've revolutionized the field of archaeological comedy. We haven't laughed this hard since the Zorblaxians concluded that ancient Rome fell because humans didn't understand basic plumbing. Actually, the building added, they're still trying to figure out how aqueducts work. Would you like to see their latest papers? They think the water flow was maintained by trained gravity elementals. Zexith finally broke. But how? How did we get everything so wrong? Well, a human physicist explained, adjusting her quantum glasses, you made the classic mistake of assuming any technology you didn't understand must be primitive. By the way, those crude stone circles you've been studying, quantum entanglement generators, we use them for mini-golf. Mini-golf? Several aliens asked simultaneously. Oh yes, interdimensional mini-golf is quite popular. Would you like to play a round? The windmill hole occasionally breaks causality, but that's half the fun. As if to demonstrate, a golf ball rolled past them, phasing through several dimensions before landing in a cup that technically existed yesterday. Now then, the human continued, who would like to learn how a coffee maker actually works? And no, it doesn't involve sacrificing beans to caffeine demons. The assembled archaeologists watched in mounting horror as humans demonstrated the true capabilities of what they dismissed as primitive technology. Each revelation was punctuated by the building AI's helpful commentary. And this is why, Professor Irrell concluded, working on his 18th correction paper, we should perhaps adopt a new academic policy. Don't assume a species is primitive just because they're not home, a human suggested. That, and maybe we should learn how their technology works before writing papers about it. Excellent suggestion, the building agreed. Now, who would like to hear about what those primitive stone arrowheads actually do? Hint, they're not for hunting. Zixith just stared at the TV remote, still trying to figure out which end to point at the screen, while humanity's primitive technology continued to rewrite everything he thought he knew about the universe.